Hey everyone, welcome to our Super Bowl predictions video. So we'll be taking a look at the Super Bowl game we have Sunday, February 11th, 6:30 p.m. on CBS. The 12-5 San Francisco 49ers versus the 11-6 Kansas City Chiefs. This is a Super Bowl matchup that's kind of surprising, but it's also not surprising. So a lot of people would have picked this matchup in the offseason. You have the San Francisco 49ers. They're the only one seed. They basically were a juggernaut the whole season. Bulldozed their way through the regular season. Kind of had a couple hiccups in the playoffs, but they got things together versus the Lions second half. Should have lost the game versus the Lions, but they were able to pull it off, having a really strong second half and stealing that win from Detroit. And then you have Kansas City. They kind of limped through the whole season, did not have a very good year this year offensively. They obviously have a top 5 defense, but usually they have a really good offense and a questionable defense, but the defense has carried them through the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes, a lot of experience there. Kelsey, a lot of guys dropping the ball throughout the regular season, but the moment the playoffs started, that's when the experience kicked in, and they have yet to drop a pass. They've been really efficient. Now, they're not lighting things up on offense still, but they're scoring when they have to, and they're relying on their defense. Patrick Mahomes has no picks so far during the playoffs, but we'll be looking at who we think is going to win, who we think is going to lose, and what we predict the final score will be. So when you're looking at this game, San Francisco actually comes in here. They are 2-point favorites right now. These are two really good teams. These are two top 3 defenses. Both defenses get after the ball. When you're looking at a comparison of the two rosters, there's actually no comparison. 49ers are overwhelmingly the better roster. They have the better offensive roster. They have the better defensive roster. Now, that's not a knock on Kansas City's defense. Like I said, they have a top 3 defense. It's just San Francisco has a lot more playmakers, a lot more name recognition on the defensive side of the ball. They were a top 5 defense coming into this year, and then at the halfway point, they added Chase Young. So they technically got even better on paper. Looking at their offensive roster, they probably hands down have the best offensive roster in all of football, technically on paper. You have Brock Purdy, who actually statistically had a better year so far than Mahomes. You have Christian McCaffrey at running back, who's the best running back in all of football. You have Ayuk. You have Deebo Samuel. He is healthy. You have Kittle. Lots of playmakers. They play good defense. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball. When you look on the other side and you look at Kansas City, obviously this team's just kind of built a little differently so far. They have Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in all of football. He's been the best quarterback now for 5 years. That's not really questionable. He's not the MVP this year. Didn't have his best year so far, but this is a stacked team, and he makes plays when he has to make plays because he's been around for a while. He is, as of right now, the best quarterback in all of football. So even though Purdy's stats are better, everybody knows that Mahomes is obviously better than Purdy. That's not a knock on Purdy, but it is what it is. Now, they have Pacheco at running back. They have Kelsey at wide receiver. So they have the playmakers there. They have a decent running game. They have, obviously, the best tight end in all of football, the best quarterback. You know, Rice, some of the other guys, they kind of have a questionable wide receiver core. Like we mentioned, a lot of drop passes so far during the year. But that hasn't been a problem yet so far during the playoffs. So they haven't had to worry about that. But it was a problem the whole regular season. So we know it's there. It just hasn't reared its head so far during the playoffs. But could it potentially show up during the Super Bowl game? Possibly. But they have Andy Reid. They are experienced. When you have experience, you're usually, for the most part, not bound to make those type of screw-ups. Usually those guys can overcome or overcompensate for what their flaws are, and they can play better. That's what the Chiefs have done so far this year, so far in the playoffs. But when those issues are there, they could always technically rear their head. So we have to be aware of the questionable wide receiver core and of the drop passes, because those can technically come up at any point versus a really good San Francisco defense. But the Chiefs obviously are not going to be intimidated at all. They beat the Bills. They beat the Ravens, the other number 1 seed in the playoffs. So they've beaten 2 teams that are technically, on paper, on roster, better than their current team, and they beat them both. So they're not worried about San Francisco. Kansas City has absolutely zero pressure on them. This is Mahomes' fourth Super Bowl in 5 years, or third Super Bowl in 5 years. He's been would be technically his fourth Super Bowl in 5 years. So this team's been there before. They have nothing to prove. He's going for his third out of 4 Super Bowl victories. So he'd have 3 victories in 5 years. So he has no pressure on him. He's just basically paying to try to keep up with Tom Brady, to try to replace him as the GOAT potentially one day. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. But that's kind of the field that he's in currently right now, is trying to rack up as many Super Bowls as he can over the next 10 years while he's playing. They've been there before, nothing to prove. San Francisco, they've been in the conference championship 3 straight times, haven't been able to get through. Finally punched through it this year. They did go to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, lost. They have everything to prove. They have the pressure on them this season. They haven't won a Super Bowl since the early 90s, so everything is on the table right now. This is as good as their roster is going to be in a long time. They have a really good roster this year, the most talented roster in all of football. If there's ever a year for them to win it, it's this year. And who better to do it versus the defending champs versus the Chiefs? So the pressure's on them. Pressure is not on the Chiefs. When you look at these two team rosters, obviously, you have Brock Purdy having a great year. He had 4,300 passing yards, 31 touchdowns, 11 picks. Mahomes had 4,200 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 14 picks. Kind of an uncharacteristic year for him this year, but I don't think it's necessarily his fault. He was having to force a lot of balls, and there was a lot of balls getting dropped, a lot of balls getting batted up by Tony and getting picked off. So I'd probably say half of those picks were not on Mahomes. It was just on really bad play from the wide receivers. Looking at the team stats here, San Francisco comes in, they're averaging 28.9 points per game. Kansas City, 21.8. So San Francisco has a top 5 offense. Kansas City has basically a top 15, a top 20 offense. So there's a lot of parity there between the offenses. Obviously, San Francisco has the better offense. On defense, these teams are virtually a lock. So San Francisco gives up 17.5 points per game. Kansas City gives up 17.3 points per game. Both top 3 defenses. These defenses get after it. They hit the quarterback a lot, sack the quarterback a lot. Both quarterbacks are mobile. They're not running quarterbacks. They're passing quarterbacks, but both of them can scramble. Both of them can extend plays. The Lions definitely found that out last week because Brock Purdy ran for like 40 yards in the fourth quarter, extending plays with his legs, still keeping his eyes down the field. Mahomes can do similar type of things. So these defenses get after the quarterback. They're going to be seeking to flush them out, try to condense them in the pocket. But if any holes open up, both of these guys can run. When you're looking at the talent level, Brock Purdy obviously had the better year than Mahomes this season, but the edge at the quarterback position obviously goes to Patrick Mahomes. When you're looking at the wide receivers, obviously Christian McCaffrey had 1,500 yards so far this year. So the edge at the wide receiver position goes to the 49ers. When you look at the tight ends, Kittle is a great tight end. Guy's a beast. But Kelsey's all-time. He's up there with Gronkowski. He's obviously the best tight end in all of football. He's the go-to third down guy for Mahomes. So if Kelsey's on, he's going to hit 100 yards this game. But the edge at tight end goes to Kansas City. Looking at wide receivers, obviously Kansas City comes in there with Rice, but San Francisco is loaded. They have Ayuk, they have Deebo Samuels, kind of a running back wide receiver hybrid. But the edge goes to San Francisco. They have the playmakers, but Kansas City has some of the big names, some of the guys that you know and you can count on in the Super Bowl. They've been there before. They've been under the lights. They've made big plays in the Super Bowl. This is a really good matchup. This is the matchup that the NFL wanted. We all know it because they want to see Taylor Swift. People are going to be putting over-unders out there to how many times do they show Taylor Swift during the Super Bowl. It's kind of distracting. Probably everybody outside of Kansas City is not rooting for Kansas City just because they're kind of so sick of the publicity that the Chiefs have gotten so far this year. Just a lot of off-the-field stuff. But it doesn't matter. If they're the better team, San Francisco is kind of coming into this game limping, although they had a great second half versus Detroit. They did not play well. That defense did not show up. They gave up a lot of points to the Lions. Kansas City hasn't given up 30 points the whole season. And San Francisco gave up 30 last week to the Lions, who have a pretty good offense, but San Francisco's shown some holes on the defensive side, but we know what their defense is capable of. Can they play to the way that they're capable of in the Super Bowl? So when you're looking at this matchup, Kansas City, as of right now, which is obviously there's a little under 2 weeks till the Super Bowl happens, but they're 2-point favorites as of today. So my final score prediction for this game, I have San Francisco getting the win 27-24. That's as of right now. There's a lot that can happen between now and the Super Bowl. Guys can get hurt, but this does give Debo some time to continue to get healthy. It gives us some time to see what's going to happen in the practice, what's going to happen off the field. I would in no way be surprised if the Chiefs win this game, though. They're the more experienced team. Every time you doubt them in the playoffs, they were underdogs versus the Bills. They beat them. They were underdogs versus the Ravens. They beat them. They're slight underdogs, but not really. Versus San Francisco, they could very well beat them. They're the experienced team with the coach that knows how to win the Super Bowl, knows how to control his big personalities. But a lot of people are going to be rooting for San Francisco here. They're obviously one of the biggest brands in NFL history. They're going for their 6th or 7th Super Bowl victory as an organization. I have San Francisco finally getting over the hump, beating the Chiefs, getting the Super Bowl win, and covering the spread. So that's my breakdown of the NFL Super Bowl predictions. Hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them below, and I'll make sure to respond. Thanks.